We're now streaming live, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon. A warm welcome to councils, officers attending, to members of the public and press viewing the meeting via live stream. I hope you're all keeping well, and best wishes to go to you all in what still difficult times for many people. I'm Councillor Stan Avis and I'm Chairman of East London District Council Licensing Committee. To help assist us with the smooth running of this meeting, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping rules. Firstly, please only turn on your microphone when speaking. If you do not turn your microphone on, those listening to the meeting via stream will not be able to hear you. Once you have finished speaking, please turn off your microphone. This is really important as you will hinder the next speaker and the audio will become unclear with background noise. If you wish to speak in the meeting, please press the raised hand button on the participant list, or just put your hand up and I will then invite councillors to speak in the order that they're requested to speak. There is no fire alarm test scheduled for today. If the alarm bell sounds, a member of staff will guide you out of the building. Thank you. I will move to the Generalizing Committee agenda, Monday the 13th of September 2021. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Benjamin, Councillor Leonard, Councillor Billy Brooks, Councillor Devereux, Councillor Cullen and Councillor Horton. Councillor Graham Williams will be substituting today. Thank you.
Thank you. Disclosure of interest, if any. No, thank you. To confirm the open and exempt minutes of the General Licensing Committee held on the 5th of July. Can I propose it, please?
I'll propose then.
Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Item 4 is the annual view of the maximum Hackney carriage fare structure. This is a report by the Principal Licensing Officer, Mr. Twiddy.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll go through the report for you and I'll also try and pick out some of the more important salient reports, sections of the report as well. So this is the annual review of the maximum Hackney carriage fare structure. And as members are aware, you set the maximum taxi fare structure for the district. Proprietors and drivers are allowed to charge less than the maximum fare structure, but they can't charge more for journeys that begin and end within East Lindsey. It's also important to remember that you're not setting the fare structure for private hire vehicles, type of vehicles that people sometimes call mini cabs. You're not setting the fare structure for those, you're just setting the maximum fare structure for taxis. That's the vehicles that apply for hire and wait on the taxi ranks. This authority's policy is that it reviews the fare structure once a year. Now that normally happens about January, February, March, the beginning of the year. You looked at the fare structure in March of this year and you decided to push it back for 6 months to September of this year, just for things to bed in relation to COVID and other matters. So this is the annual fare structure review. It's just taking place a bit later in the year than it normally would. You've had some requests for an increase in the maximum fare structure. You've had a request from the Skegness Taxi Owners Association, and you have a copy of that request in the report that you have. I've also put in front of you a request from the other association in Skegness, which is the Skegness and District Taxi Drivers Association. They've asked for an increase in the fare structure as well, and that is slightly different to the request that's been put in by the Taxi Owners Association chair, and I'll go through the two of those in a moment. It's important to remember, if you're minded to increase the fare structure, it has to be advertised in the local newspaper and a period of time allowed for objections if anybody wishes to object to any fare increase. If there is an objection and it's a valid objection, then your proposal would need to come back for you then to consider any objections that came in. So just remember, any decision that you make today, if it's an proposed increase in the fare structure, that will be subject to a statutory notice to see if anybody wants to object. And if they do, then it comes back to you again for you to reconsider. So in relation to the report that you have from the licensing team and officers, I think what we would say is we have no specific concern or objection if you're minded to increase the fare structure. And I think we would say to you, given the rate of inflation at the moment, which is 2.4%, that was the June figure, and the increase in fuel prices, I think we would ask you if you are to seriously consider some increase in the fare structure. But you don't have to go with the increase that's proposed by either of the associations. If you're minded for a lesser increase, of course, if you think that's warranted, or of course, if you don't feel that an increase is warranted, those are options available to you. So in the report, we've given you, like I say, the rate of inflation. We've given you a comparison of fuel prices as they are now compared with how they were in 2018 when the taxi fare structure was last increased. And you will see that things have gone up since then. If it's okay, Chair, I'll just go through the individual aspects of the fare structure, just to explain those, and then I'll just go through what the two associations are asking for. So the fare structure itself, the fares for distance, they're made up in two ways. There's the Flagpole, which is the minimum price, which is shown on the taxi meter when you get into the vehicle. And that minimum price, that Flagpole doesn't change until you've moved a set distance. And that set distance is set out on Appendix A for you. Once you've moved past that minimum distance in the Flagpole, you then go into the unit distance, which in this authority is 20 pence, and it's for so many yards. So Flagpole's the initial charge, and then the unit distance is the amount you pay for the yardage once you've gone past the Flagpole. And I'll go through that for you in a moment in a bit more detail. But what I would say to you on paragraph 1.2 of the report, what we've done for you, the daytime tariff, so this is the tariff that people would pay during the day, the maximum tariff for 2 mile, 3 mile and 4 mile journeys we've put there for you, and we've compared for you what the mileage would be, what the charge would be for a 2 or 3 or 4 mile journey if you accepted the proposals from the Skegness Taxi Owners Association. Remember that in the night time and on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve and things like that, Christmas Day and New Year's Day, the fares are increased, as well as night time they're increased. There's also what is called the waiting time, and that comes into play when the taximeter, when the vehicle is more or less stationary or moving in very slow moving traffic. And then it will stop charging the unit distance, the yardage amount as I call it, and it will then go on to waiting time. And I'll tell you about that in a second as well. You also have extra charges, which is paragraph 1.5. and that relates to if there's more than 2 people hiring the vehicle, and you've got a set way of charging that, and I'll go through that in a second as well. There is also what is called the booking fee or the call out charge, and that's detailed in paragraph 1.6. Not all councils have call out charges or booking fee charges. The last time I checked, South Kesteven, South Holland and Boston district councils did allow a booking fee, and I'll just explain what that is. Let's say I'm a taxi firm in Louth and somebody rings me who lives in Withen and says, would you come and pick me up in Withen and take me to Mablethorpe? So you've got that dead mileage, as I'm going to call it, where you travel from Louth to Withen to pick them up. And the call out charge allows the hackney carriage proprietor to charge for that dead mileage while the vehicle is travelling to pick them up when there's nobody actually in the vehicle. So that's how that works. I think, Chair, that's all I wanted to say on that side of things. It's how members really want me to do this. Do you want me to just go through the individual aspects of the fare structure and just explain the options that have been put to you by the individual associations?
If you would, please,
Yeah,
that would
okay.
simplify things, please.
Right. So if we start with the Flagpole. So during the daytime, the Flagpole at the moment is £3.20 for the first 800 yards. So when you get in a taxi at a taxi rank, the taxi meter will show £3.20, and then it won't move off that £3.20 until you've travelled 800 yards. So the Skegness Taxi Owners Association are asking you to increase that from £3.20 to £3.50. So that would be an increase of 30p. Yeah, in old money, yes.
Yeah.
The Skegness and District Taxi Drivers Association have put an alternative proposal to you. They would like the Flagpole increasing by 20p, so not 30, 20p to £3.40. If you then go to what I'm going to call the unit distance, the mileage rate, which at the moment is after you've travelled 800 yards, for each subsequent 195 yards, and I'm sorry it's all in yards rather than metric. That suits me. That's fine. The taxi meters only work on yardage. They don't work on metric measurements, which seems really strange. But for each subsequent 195 yards, at the moment, it's 20p. The Skegness Taxi Association want that to be 20p for each 190 yards. So in effect, you're travelling 5 yards less for the 20p. Which, if you're travelling a considerable distance, after a while, that will start to increase the charge. If you're doing shorter journeys, then you're not going to see too much increase in the fare structure on the yardage, because you're only travelling 5 yards less to get the 20p, let's say. And I think it would be fair to say, yeah, the Skegness and District Taxi Drivers Association, they've asked for the same as well. So in effect, both associations have asked for the yardage to be reduced by 5 yards. I haven't mentioned it, but you've also got an email from Mr. Simon Evans, who's a taxi proprietor in Skegness. That's in Appendix C of the report. He sent an email in March, and I have made contact with him and said, does his views still stand? And he says they do. He actually says he doesn't want to see any increase in the fare structure in relation to Flagpole and unit distance. But he's the only individual person that's actually made contact with me. The rest have been the 2 associations. At that point, Skegness and District Taxi Drivers Association are saying they don't want to see any other increase in the fare structure. So the Skegness and District Taxi Association are just asking you to amend the Flagpole and amend the unit distance, the distance travelled. In relation to the waiting time, this is when the vehicle is stationary or moving very slowly in slow moving traffic. The way that as officers and the people who calibrate the taxi meters deal with it, we deal with it as an hourly rate. So we look at, if you left that vehicle waiting for an hour outside your house, how much would that result in? That's a rarity, but that's how we would work it out. The current hourly rate is £14.40, and the Skegness Taxi Association want that to increase to £16. And I think it's only fair to say to you that you as a committee have considered exactly the same request from the Skegness Taxi Owners Association in 2014, 2015, 16, 18, 19, and you've declined each time to increase the waiting time. Mr. Blackburn from the Skegness Taxi Association hasn't really given you any reason as to why, in my view, as to why when you've declined in previous years, you should now consider increasing it this year. I would encourage him actually to give you a good argument as to why the previous years you didn't, why you should this year. But that's not to say that you shouldn't increase that. You've also got, in relation to the Taxi Drivers Association request, the extra charges, which is where more than two people hire the vehicle. So where more than two people hire the vehicle, if it's a saloon vehicle, for the third and fourth additional person, you allow a flat rate of 25 pence to be put on to the journey. So if it's a saloon vehicle and it's got 4 passengers on, at the end of the journey, once the taxi meter has done the waiting time, the Flagpole and the unit distance, then there would be 2 times 25, 50 pence would be then added to cover passengers 3 and 4. In relation to the multi-seater vehicles, where the vehicles can carry more than 5 people, what you allow is passengers 3 and 4 to be 25 pence, and then 5 to 8, 50 pence. What the Skegness Taxi Owners Association want to happen is to get rid of that distinction between passengers 3 and 4 and 5, 6, 7 and 8. They just want everybody to be charged 50 pence rather than 3 and 4 to be 25. But yet again, I think it would be fair to say to you, you've had similar requests from the association going back to 2013, and each time you've declined to do that change. You've left things as they are. We then come to the booking fee call-out charge. And I've mentioned the booking fee call-out charge, but what I didn't mention was, and this is for the dead mileage when somebody goes to be picked up, you allow a maximum charge for 15 miles. So if the proprietor wants to go any further than 15 yards, they have to accept that they're not going to be able to charge for any dead mileage after the 15 miles. You also say that they've got to make sure that the customer knows about that booking fee, that call-out charge at the time they make it. So it's not a surprise to them when the driver turns up and there's, by the way, I've travelled 15 miles to come and see you. So you're going to get a call-out charge of X. They need to know about that before they book the vehicle. It's the call-out charge, the current mileage rate is 50 pence, and the Skegness Taxi Association want that to increase to 75 pence per mile. Like I've said, the Skegness Taxi Drivers Association have not mentioned it and don't want an increase in it. Mr. Evans, the independent person who wrote to you or emailed to you, said he wanted to see the 75 pence per mile, and he also wanted to see the cap of 15 miles removed, primarily to encourage proprietors to travel extra distance to pick up passengers. And I would say, from my experience in the East Lindsey district, where you have got large rural areas, there will be some areas of the district where they're not covered by private hire vehicles or hackney carriages, and people are making calls to proprietors to come and pick them up. So Mr. Evans' view is by allowing the call-out charge to be made by getting rid, in his view, of the cap, it would encourage them to get out there and travel the distances to pick up people who haven't got access, let's say, to a bus service at certain times and haven't got access to a hackney carriage or private hire vehicle in their particular part of the district. The other thing I better mention to you is Easter Sunday. Mr. Blackburn, in paragraph 1.9 of the report, has asked you to allow Easter Sunday to be charged on the Tariff 2 rate. So that's the extra charge rate where the flagpole, the waiting time, the unit distance are increased by 50%. Now you allow that on bank and public holidays. Of course, Easter Sunday is not a bank or public holiday, and Mr. Blackburn's association feels that they should be able to charge that. It's not something that you've allowed in the past. You had similar requests in 2018 and 2019, and they were declined by the committee. To just give you a bit of background, Sunday is a bit of a strange one in Lincolnshire as a whole. Some councils allow any Sunday to be charged at time and a half. Other councils like East Lindsey say, no, Sunday's no different to any other day. The only time and a half comes in is at 11 o'clock at night, when it's night time. So that's why Mr. Blackburn particularly is asking about Easter Sunday, because Sundays are not covered in any shape or form by this authority. One of the final things I'll say, Chair, just so everybody's aware, remember if you're minded to increase the fare structure and it goes through with no objections, and then the proprietors can charge it, in order to charge it, they would have to change the calibration of their tachometer, and that would be a cost to them. So they would have to get that professionally recalibrated. So what you would need to bear in mind is if you were minded to make any increase, it should cover the cost of a taximeter calibration, which is probably, I haven't got the figure here, is probably going to be in the region of about 70 to 80 pounds. So the first 70, 80 pounds of any increase is going to be taken up by recalibrating the taximeter. And if you're a taxi proprietor with 10 or 12 vehicles, which there are some in East Lindsey with a number of vehicles, they're going to have to make quite a bit of money before they recoup the cost of recalibrating the taximeter. I mentioned that because I have, when I was a licensing officer at a previous authority, faced an experience where the committee gave an increase, and actually then when you looked at it, it was going to take a long time before the cost of the recalibration of the taximeters was clawed back, let's say. So quite happy to answer any questions, Chair. And I know there's quite a lot of figures there to take into consideration, but I think it's really for members to have a debate and see where they want to go with this one. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Williams.
Can I ask you a question about the fares for distance? You mentioned that the flagpole obviously covers that first 800 yards, nearly 800 yards. Am I right in thinking that at 801 yards, that extra 20p is immediately off? Or does it get added at 190 or 195 yards, depending on which scheme you're on? Which end of that does the 20p get added?
Councillor, as soon as you go past the flagpole, so soon amount, 20 pence is added immediately.
And so on thereafter.
Yes.
So on thereafter, yeah.
After 192 metres again, it gets added on.
It does, yes.
That does affect the actual amount charged, because I actually did a quick calculation on the original one, £6 to £6.50, which you show. In fact, if you actually calculate it dead, it would be £6.36. But because of the effect of just clipping over, that extra 14 pence is because of the meter, the way it's set up. Is that correct, what I'm understanding?
It is, yeah. And remember that the unit distance will be amounts of 20 pence.
Correct.
So it'll go up in 20 pence each time. It's not incremental. You don't get a part of the 20 pence
Right,
as well.
and it affects As soon as you cross the border, then it's added.
It does, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any more questions at all? So do we want to take this one at a time then, Adrian, or are we going to do it as?
Red line. What's a red line?
Somebody's lights on.
Oh, sorry. I've learned something new.
I've learned something new there. Thank you. So I think probably it might be easiest if members want to go through it line by line, or if members are not minded to give any form of increase, then there's no need to go through it line by line. But I think it's probably, first of all, if members are happy for me to go through it line by line, Chair, through you.
Yeah, if we could do that then, please. Yeah, that would be fine, Adrian. Then you'll know what the increases are going to be.
Okay.
So on the first one, it's the flagpole, isn't it?
Oh, you got to.
Sorry. Yes.
Yes, now, are we really minded? Obviously we're still just getting out of the pandemic. I do know that everybody's extremely busy about the time, and everybody seems to love the target. I think these taxi drivers are probably just as busy as everybody else, and I just don't know if it is the right time to increase at the time. I know the committee did defer it for 6 months, but I wonder if we ought to defer it another 6 months. It's only opinion, that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Parkin, yes.
Yeah, I think my concern in that is how much we then increase it by. It's a little bit like bragging about your council tax being low, I should think, in that eventually you lose step with what is the real charge. And I think fuel has gone up by so much that if we don't do something, even if it's a little bit modest now, then I think we may end up in a more difficult situation as prices get out of step with what the reality is. Have you got any modelling, Adrian, about how the increase in fuel is impacting on the drivers? If they're given any intelligence, any info on that you can give?
I've not had any modelling from the trade at all. No. I mean, to be fair to them, I think most things have gone up for them. It's not just the fuel prices, it's the insurance, it's the maintenance, it's the vehicles, it's buying new tyres. Everything seems to have gone up for them over this last period of time. And I do have some sympathy for them, I must admit, Chair, in relation to the current situation. Thank you.
Well, I do have a proposal to change. Do I have a seconder for that proposal or not? No?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'll second.
You'll second the proposal that we defer? Sorry, Councillor. Yes?
No, I've seconded the wrong thing. Withdraw that.
Sorry. Yes. We'll start again. Yes, yes, Councillor Mannion.
I will support the fact that we should increase the amount at this point in time. I think there's been significant increases in the cost to the taxi driver, so I would agree that we need to make some recommendation on increase.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just to clarify what Councillor Andrews thought he was seconding or not. That was all.
Right.
Sorry, Chairman, I withdraw that proposal anyway. Then that'll save you a problem.
Okay, sorry, yes, carry on. Yes, you'll withdraw.
I haven't made anything. I just want to continue the conversation. So, following what was just said about the effect of fuel increases, I did a calculation on this quickly, and that increase roughly equates to about 2p per mile, very broadly on an average car. So for every mile they're doing, it's costing them 2p a mile more in fuel than it did 3 years ago, based on that increase there. So you got 4p of that increase they're asking for. Also, of course, as I said, there is this effect of rounding. Because if you look at the old rate, because of this 180, 195 yards, the actual dead calculation was £5.99, but you got charged £6. If you accepted the new rates, because of this rounding effect or boundary effect, it becomes £6.36, which becomes £6.50. So it looks a bigger jump. It is a bigger jump because of the effect. It jumps from, in fact, instead of a 6% increase, it becomes an 8% increase. But of course, that's mitigated the further you go because the rounding effect gets less and less and less. But on the short journeys, you do get penalised on it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Right. Okay, so we'll go through on the. I think the end point is just to run through to see whether we agree on those. On the flagpole, the 800 yards one, whether we do that to put it up 30p or 20p.
So yeah, what I'll do then, Chair, I'll just go, like you've said, individual aspects of the fare structure. So the first bit to consider is the flagpole. So that's the minimum charge. That's when you get into the vehicle, the minimum charge will be displayed on the taximeter. So currently the minimum charge, just bear with me,
£3.20
is £3.20. The Skegness Taxi Association would like it to see increased to £3.50. Sorry, the Skegness Taxi Drivers, I'll start again. Skegness and District Taxi Owners Association would like to see it increased by 30p to £3.50. The District Taxi Drivers Association of Skegness want to see an increase of 20p. So it's either in reality 30p increase, 20p increase, or probably no increase, whichever members want to go with.
Have we got any comments on that? Do we increase it by 20, 30 or not at all? Those in favour of 20p? Sorry. Yes, sorry. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Can I just play devil's advocate a little bit, and can't we just do 345 and go between the two?
Without sounding as though I'm being a bit flippant, I'm trying to say this in a nice way. I've done this job for a long, long time now, and the taxi trade on the whole like to avoid fare structures that end up with 5p, because then you're having to carry more change. And I'm not saying that's not a reason to do it, but by increasing it with a 5p at the end, then you do mean they've got to carry a lot more change. Yet again, it wouldn't work. You've got to have the certain formulas that work within the taximeter. Yeah. So yeah, they do carry a lot of change already. You would just be then adding to the amount of change they'd have to carry. But that's not a reason not to go with that.
Right. I'll go first because those in favour of no change at all, please show. It's the one, right? Okay, 2. Just make a note, 2. Those in favour of increasing it by 20p. Well, that's 5. So so we increase that by 20p, Adrian. Thank you. The next one is to reduce from 195 yards to 190 yards. Those in favour of that or leaving as it is? Those in favour of leaving it as it is at 195 yards? Yes, 195. So decrease it to 190. Those in favour of reducing it to 190 yards? Yeah, so that's carried. Reduce it to 190 yards, Adrian, please. Sorry. Yes, please, yeah.
You've got the waiting time there. So
Oh, yes, that's, yeah.
Stationary or in very slow moving traffic. So, in effect, well, at the moment it's 20 pence for each period of 50 seconds, and the association, Skegness Taxi Owners Association, wanted going to 20 pence for each period of 45 seconds, which would be an increase on the hourly rate from 40 to 60.
Yes.
Can I just ask the question?
Can I ask about the this waiting time? How is that actually applied in the sense of, okay, I'm in a taxi and it's driving slowly. Is this on per second, or does it immediately, as soon as it slows to a certain amount, stops? Does it immediately kick in at 50p or whatever the charge is? How elastic is that, or is it not?
First of all, what I would say, Chair, is that if the vehicle's stationary, that is it. The taximeter goes straight onto waiting charge. So if the vehicle's not moving and the taximeter's switched on and it's gone past the flagpole, then the waiting time will happen. But it will also happen if the vehicle's moving at a negligible speed. So if you're in very, very slow moving traffic, it will forget about the distance and it will start doing the waiting time. And I'm sorry, I don't know the actual miles per hour at which point it will start, but it is very slow. And it's the same way as the unit distance works. It's for each period or uncompleted part thereof.
So if it stops at 2 seconds, that's 20p.
Yeah.
Then if you move up at a short speed and stop again, maybe 20 seconds later, does it then kick in again?
It will keep kicking in. Yeah.
So that could amount to quite a lot of money in slow moving traffic.
I've told you wrong, Chair, sorry. So I said it kicks in for each uncompleted part of. It's got to be a completed part. So that's where it's different. So you're going to have to wait 50 seconds before the 20 pence comes on. So sorry, I told you wrong the first time round. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So those are in favour. Sorry, Councillor Mannion.
I mean, if I understand it correctly, based on an hourly rate, it would go up from about £14 an hour to £16 an hour. Leave aside the pence. That's a 14% increase, which is more than the cost of inflation. And that to me is too high.
Thank you.
Keep it in line with inflation, that's fine.
So on this, sorry, yes, Councillor. Yeah.
But in just what Councillor Mannion just there, that has not moved for 6 years though, has it? So looking at it in terms of 14%, it's not year on year. That is a 14% increase, but in fact, it's over a 7-year period that hasn't moved. So that's 2% per year, if you like to look at it in a different way. Just an observation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the observation.
Thank you. Yeah, so we've got we'd either leave it the same or we move it up to, or we move it up to £16. Those in favour of leaving it as it is, at the same as it is now. Those to increase it to £16 for the waiting time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Okay, so that's carried. So it moves up to £16, Adrian, please. And if you can go on to the next one, please, and then we'll.
The next one is the extra charges that can be made for the additional persons. So this is where at the moment, for passengers 3 to 4, you can charge 25p for passengers 3 and 4. If you're in a multi-seater vehicle, then for passengers 5, 6, 7 and 8, you can charge 50 pence for each of those. And the proposal from the Skegness Taxi Owners Association is that every passenger over 2 is a flat rate fee of 50p, and the Skegness and District Taxi Drivers Association are not asking for an increase in any shape or form on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So those in favour, first of all, of leaving it the same as it is. The first two people pay 25p, 3 and 4, and the next over that will get. So those in favour of leaving it as it is at 25p. So that's carried, please, because there's no leaving that at 25p.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the next one is a bit more complex, this one. It's the call out charge. So this is the call out charge to charge a mileage rate to go to pick somebody up when, and you're charging for what I call the dead mileage, the mileage while nobody's in the vehicle. So at the moment it's to a maximum distance of 15 miles and it's 50 pence for each mile. And the Skegness and District Taxi Drivers Association didn't want to see an increase. The Taxi Owners Association want to see that increase to 75p per mile. So that's from 50 to 75. And they want the maximum distance of 15 miles to be removed. So in effect, you can charge for any dead mileage, no matter how far it is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Those in favour of leaving it as it is?
Sorry, Chair.
Sorry.
Are we able to give alternative proposals, or do we just have to follow what has been put forward?
Well, we can do alternative ones if
because I would quite like to know what kind of increase we would need to put on if we were just to be covering the average increase in fuel. So because I think that seems like a hell of a jump to me now. So I just wonder if there's a compromise position we could reach that is more closely aligned to the fuel increases.
Yes, the committee's got the alternative to increase it to whatever they want to increase it to. It's entirely up to them. These are just suggestions that the people who run the taxis are asking for.
So Adrian, have you got any idea at all what kind of level that would put it at?
There is a problem, and it's sorry to say there is a problem, but it's the way the taximeters work. So there's only a limited amount of things that you can put in most of the taximeters, and one of the things that does limit you is the extra charges, because there's only so many extra charges that you can put in the vehicle and or in the taximeter. So if you have a look in paragraph 1.5 of the report, you'll note that the extra charges are going up in increments of 25 pence, and in the same way your dead mileage is going up in effect is a multiple of 25 pence. So you can, sorry, I'm struggling. I know what's in my mind, but actually trying to say this, I'm finding a bit difficult. Your extra charges at the moment are governed by an increment of 25 pence. Everything's got to be a multiple on the extra charges of 25 pence. The taximeter wouldn't be able to cope if you then threw in an increment of 30 pence or 15 pence or 10 pence. The increment at the moment is 25. And so that's why I'm assuming, because this mileage rate predates me. I think it was here when I arrived. It's 50 pence, which as far as I can see fits in with the extra charge for passengers, and it's to allow the taximeters to be able to accommodate that. Definitely some of the older taximeters, you can't get anything else in there. Some of the newer ones you may be able to, but at the moment I think you are stuck with this increment of 25 pence, unless there's somebody in here that knows a bit more about taximeters than I do. But I do know yet again, sorry, I'll say one more thing, Councillor, and then I'll shut up on it. Yet again, I know from my own experience of having at a previous authority, a licensing committee trying to change some of these extra charges, and then they were unworkable because you couldn't get them in the taximeter. Does that make sense? Thanks.
Yes, Councillor.
Can I propose that we leave it at 50 pence but do away with the cap?
Well, we've got, yes, Councilman. Put it at 50p and remove the cap. Leave the cap.
Councillor, you haven't got your speaker on.
Yeah, sorry. My counter proposal would be to increase the 75, but keep the cap. In this part of the world, the distance may make a big difference.
So we've got 50p and remove the cap, is that correct? And then we've got 75p and remove the cap.
No,
Keep the cap.
Keep the cap.
Right, well, I've got the first proposal of 50p and remove. Sorry.
I don't know if it's because I'm just like a newbie on the committee, so this is the first time I've had a review like this, but I'm really then struggling to kind of understand what would be acceptable to the associations and what the impact of that would be on the ground. Just so, Adrian, if you've got any more context, because I'm just aware that I don't want us to get challenged on this. So it'd be interesting to see what that would look like.
All I would say is that my experience, and I've worked now at East Lindsey since January 2005, that there always has, as far as I can remember, been a maximum on the call out. Sorry, there's been a cap on the call out charge, a maximum distance. So to take it off, and I'm not saying that I disagree with that, but to take it off for some people, it may be a bit of a shock that it's gone. But what I would say is, we don't get many people who contact us to say, and in fact, I can't remember the last time it happened, where a passenger or customer contacted us and said, taxi proprietor wanted so-and-so to come and pick me up. I don't think that's right. I've never had recently or anybody contact me about it. What I would say is I think this authority set a maximum distance as a way, because one of the reasons for the taxi fare structure is to ensure that the public are not getting overcharged, but also you're here to ensure that the taxi trade can earn a reasonable living. You're here to balance the two things, but you're also here to protect the public as well, because particularly with hackney carriages where you flag them down or you jump in them at a taxi rank, you haven't got time to negotiate a fare. You just hire the vehicle there and then. The whole reason, like I say, guys, so you are there to protect the public to a degree in relation to the fare structure, but also what you're trying to balance is you're in a rural area where some people don't have access to a private hire vehicle or a taxi in their village, and so you're trying to encourage the trade to get out there and visit these areas and work in these areas where they have to travel a distance. And I think very much the trade, when this was instigated, would have said, we're not going from Horncastle to Woodall Spa or whatever, or Skegness to Alford. It's not worthwhile as doing it unless we can charge for that dead mileage. But yeah, there has always in my memory been a maximum distance. That's not to say you can't remove it or increase it. It may be a surprise for the public that there is an unlimited distance then, but it's your decision really. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Adrian. Okay, so I've got on here, I've got no other changes. I've just got 15 miles at 50p with that 15-mile cap. All those in favour of leaving that as it is, can you please show?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Chairman, my proposal was 50p and no cap.
And no cap.
Yeah, not keep that as it is. And the reason I say that is reading this gentleman's summary, where he says that a lot of the firms won't go over the 15 miles because they can't charge anything, and so it encourages drink driving and all the rest of it. So I thought that if we keep it at 50 and then it's unlimited cap, then the taxi drivers have got no excuse not to go there. Whereas you put it up to 75 with the limited cap, you've still got the anomaly where the local taxis won't go out into the rural areas. Thank you.
Right. Well, first, I'll do it as it is first. To leave it as it is, those in favour of leaving it as it is with a cap at 50 pence per mile. Lovely, thank you. Those in favour of charging 50p with no cap. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, okay, so that is carried because there's only 3 of us left. So that's fine. Okay, so it's 50p with no cap, Adrian. And the last one, of course, is Tariff 2 for Easter Sunday.
So the last one to consider, and this is a request from the Boston. I haven't worked there since 2004. The Skegness Taxi Owners Association, they would like all day Easter Sunday to be charged at time and a half. So the flagpole, the waiting time, the unit distance would all be increased by time and a half on an Easter Sunday. They're not asking in relation to any other Sunday, just the Easter Sunday. And that is something that this authority has declined to do in 2018 and 2019. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So on this one then, have we got any? No, I'll propose to leave it as it is. Can you please show to leave it with no charge on a Sunday? Thank you. So that's carried. It stays as it is. That's fine. That takes care of that. Thank you very much. We now move to item 5, which is the exclusion of the public and press. That's under section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972. The press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the ground that if they were present, there could be disclosed exempt information as defined at paragraph 1, 2 and 3 of part 12 of the schedule 12A of the Act as amended. I propose we move into the closed session. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Those in favour? Thank you. Could we
We're now live streaming again, Chair.
Thank you. Well, that concludes the licensing committee agenda for today. The date of the next meeting will be, the programme date is the 25th of October. So we'll now move on to the Licensing Act 2003 committee. Apologies for absence, please. Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Yes, you have to go. Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. We have received apologies for absence from Councillor Benjamin, Councillor Leonard, Councillor Billy Brooks, Councillor Devereux, Councillor Cullen and Councillor Horton. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Disclosure of interest, if any. Yes, Councillor.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is from the email I received when I said I would stand in for Councillor Benjamin, that was fine for the licensing, but that I could only observe for the 2003 licensing.
Yes.
So just to be clear
observe,
that
yes.
I'm here but not here.
Yes, you can. That's correct. Thank you. To confirm the minutes of the Licensing Act 2003 meeting on the 5th of July and to confirm the minutes of the Licensing Act 2003 subcommittee meeting held on the 14th of July. Although,
I'd like to propose those minutes.
Thank you.
Chair.
Seconder, thank you. All those in favour?
Chairman, apologies. The exempt minutes, there are some amendments that we were going to discuss once we'd gone into private session. So the minutes of if we could just perhaps take a vote on the minutes of the 5th of July meeting.
Yes, it was.
No, apologies.
It was the full one was the 5th, wasn't it? It was the 5th of July. That's the full council, that's the full licensing committee. And
Chair, just carry on. You're fine.
thank you.
Apologies, Chairman. Ignore me completely.
Minutes, we're going to go to gambling policy.
Yes.
And then we'll come back to the other thing we were discussing.
Yes, lovely. Okay. So now we'll move on to the review of the gambling licensing policy, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll go through the report, and just so members are aware, remember you're not adopting this amendment to the policy, you're recommending it to full council. Your gambling policy, the gambling policy of the council can only be adopted under the Gambling Act 2005 by full council. But the way the procedure works at this authority is that the licensing committee can consider any amendments to the policy and then recommend those to full council. So the Gambling Act 2005, by law, the council is required to review that gambling policy every 3 years, and that sets out how you're going to look at and determine gambling applications such as betting shops and amusement arcades, things like that. Okay, so you did earlier on in the year consider proposed amendments to the policy, and then you issued those out to interested parties for them to make any comments, and then you said you would consider those comments and then based on those recommend any amended policy to full council for adoption later on in the year. So the consultation went out, you got one response, that was the only response to the consultation, and the consultation didn't make suggest any changes to the things that this authority was thinking of changing. So there was no response, no challenges, no comments on the actual proposed changes. So I don't really intend, Chair, going through those
No,
And
thank you.
the committee considered those earlier on in the year and decided to go with them, and no consultation responses saying, please don't do that. So I'll move on from that if that's okay.
Yeah, yes, that's fine.
There is one response to the consultation, and that's from Goschalk Solicitors, and it's Appendix B of the report pack. I think it's page 27. And Goschalks are representing the Betting and Gaming Council, and they're a relatively new association. It's a trade association representing people who that includes betting shops and online betting and gaming businesses, bingos, casinos, those things. And they're there to champion industry standards. So they've had a look at the current East Lindsey policy and that they've made some comments. And I'll go through those comments if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, fine, please carry on.
So if we move to page 33 of the report pack, and that's where I've done you some comments in relation to the comments made by Goschalks on behalf of the Betting and Gaming Council. So one thing to remember, as licensing members, you're well versed in dealing with the Licensing Act 2003, which governs alcohol licensing and entertainment licensing. And you'll know in that form of licensing, one of the licensing objectives is the prevention of public nuisance. Now, there is no comparable licensing objective in the Gambling Act. Public nuisance is not, stopping public nuisance is not a licensing objective under the Gambling Act in relation to gambling premises. So, what the consultation response is asking is for you to amend some of the policy where it mentions public nuisance. So I've had a look at the response, and I've got to say that the licensing team don't really support the comments made by the consultation response in relation to public nuisance. So they refer to an area in the council's policy, which is paragraph 5.9 of part A. And the whole point of that paragraph is saying rival businesses can make representations about new licence applications, but you need to be minded these are the things we're going to look at if it's a rival business that's making those representations. And in that, it says representations will not be considered by this authority from a rival business where they relate to demand or competition. And the Betting and Gaming Council want you to also include public nuisance. It's something that you won't consider from other businesses. We've looked at that and we've said, well, actually, the whole point of that paragraph is just to talk about rival businesses and the fact that they can make representations. We then later on in the policy, or you go on later on in the policy, to discuss public nuisance and say public nuisance is not relevant, but disorder is. And then you try within the policy to set a definition of where disorder finishes, where public nuisance finishes and disorder starts. And so as officers, we've looked at this and felt that we think those two paragraphs are fine and we don't accept that there's any need to change them. But of course, you've got the comments from the Betting and Gaming Council. If you feel they do need to change, if you want to take on board their comments, by all means do that. We do accept, though, the comments that they go on to make in page 35 in relation to betting machines in betting premises. And I think when this paragraph was drafted in the policy, I think possibly officers, we did slightly get confused between the two types of machines in betting shops, which are self-service betting machines. So if you want to put a bet on the horse racing or the football, you don't have to interact with a person behind the counter. If the betting premises has got a self-service machine, you can go to the machine. And they will also have gaming machines, what some people call fruit machines, games of chance. And I think it would be fair to say in paragraph 6.2 of the report, we haven't made it really clear which type of machines we're talking about. So we accept the need to clarify in paragraph 6.2 the type of machines that we're talking about. And so we're suggesting to you the recommendation that we have in there to take on board the comments from the Betting and Gaming Council and just amend that section appropriately. And then the only other thing is, some time ago, some authorities, such as this authority, were facing where, if let's say you've got a bingo premises licence or a betting premises licence, you're entitled to put fruit machines, gaming machines in your premises. And there was a thought process that some people were applying for betting shop licences or bingo premises licences with no intention of actually undertaking betting or bingo. They just wanted to provide the gaming machines. And the reason perhaps they were applying for that premises licence, it enabled you to have higher stakes and higher prize gaming machines than an amusement arcade was allowed to have. So it made it attractive to get hold of a betting premises licence or a bingo premises licence. And we, as an authority, tried to address that in our policy and said, if you're going to apply for a betting premises licence or a bingo premises licence, we would expect you to provide betting or bingo, and we would not look favourably on anybody who applied for such a licence just to get the allocation of the gaming machines. And what the Betting and Gaming Council are quite rightly saying, actually now that's all been addressed by the Gambling Commission's Code of Practice, which makes it very clear if you've got a betting premises licence or a bingo premises licence, you have to provide the betting or the bingo to be able to provide the gaming machines. So they're saying that that section of our policy needs rewording. It is not really required anymore, and I'd accept that. I do accept that the Gambling Commission's Code of Practice has changed the playing field, let's say, and has made everything very, very different. So within the policy, we've suggested to you some suggested amendments to that section of the policy, and hopefully you'll be happy with that and recommend it to full council. So try to go through it as quickly as I can, Chair. So the recommendation from officers is to, if members are minded to accept it, to accept the proposed changes that were considered earlier on in this year that were put out to consultation and where there was no response received on those, and then just amend the current policy with the amendments that are in Appendix C based on the response from the Betting and Gambling Council, and then I would then, if members were happy to recommend that, I would change the policy document to include those, and then that would go to full council later in the year for discussion and hopefully adoption. I'm quite happy to answer any questions on the gambling policy, Chair.
Have we got any questions from anyone, please? No. I propose we accept those changes and that the policy goes before council for recommendation. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's all done. Thank you. That actually concludes what we have on the agenda. I will just go back now to confirm the minutes of the licensing subcommittee. Sorry, yes, there's nothing.